Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, cash, stacking my coin, stacking my coin, stacking my coin.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, cash,
episode
Litecoin,
36, off the chain. I should do it like Jazzy Fizzle. I don't know if you guys know who he is, the producer. Ladies and gentlemen, hope you guys are doing well tonight, this evening, this morning, wherever you are across the globe. We've got a returning co-host guest, Phil Kennedy, tonight, so you guys should definitely enjoy his commentary on the topic we're going to be discussing tonight. Hyperbitcoinization. Have you heard of that? Let's talk about that tonight. Scientists fearing that COVID vaccine is not possible. I've been following that whole topic, and I actually fall on that side of things, but that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. So we're going to talk about that. Millions are making more money unemployed than when working because of this whole. I'm sorry. You got to credit the Democrats on this one. They're the cause of this, but we'll talk about that and get your feedback tonight. We'll get started here in a second.
Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, cash, stacking my coin, stacking my coin, stacking my coin, stacking my coin. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, cash.
Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe.
Since I was born, been stacking my coin. These niggas pop, my money keep growing. Your girl is a dot, she all on my groin. She blowing my horn, we fuck like porn. These rappers is whack, they lyrics are corn. I'm getting this money, it never get born.
Don't forget to call in tonight, guys. You guys know I like to have phone conversations with you guys. Those are the best. You guys are some of the smartest, most well-rounded subscribers I know on YouTube. So let's get it in. Call us up.
Stacking my coin, stacking my coin, stacking my coin, stacking my coin.
Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Stacking my coin, stacking my coin.
Fucking thing sucks.
Stacking my coin.
We'll do it live. Okay.
Yes, we're doing it live, people. Hope everyone is doing well again tonight. Welcome to another episode 35. I've got Phil Kennedy on again tonight, guys. Give him a warm welcome. Phil, what's going on, man?
CB, good to see you, man. You know, we get to do these more often now that we all really have nothing else to do, so I can't think of a better way to spend a Saturday evening than with you talking crypto, sound money, the quarantine,
yeah, man,
paycheck protection program, all the stuff that we're going to get into. So
I hope you take advantage of that. That's what I want to make sure. A lot of people that think they're not, sole proprietors. If you got a business on the side, you might as well try to sign up for it and get that money, man. They owe us one or two or three. Where do you have any businesses that you utilize?
So in terms of
that PPP?
Yeah, in terms of me, CB, I've got family who were able to take advantage of it. My mom runs a residential cleaning business, and she put in her paperwork like day one and finally heard last week that it came through. So
nice.
That was a relief. She has probably a dozen employees. Okay. So that definitely hit near and dear to home. But also my brother, he's in real estate. My co-host, John Kennedy on Kennedy Financial, he said that his organization's PPP came through. So, you know, as long as Jerome Powell is pumping out this funny money, we might as well take advantage of it. It's not our fault that they're going this route. You and I don't necessarily agree with this financial path, but we might as well take advantage of it while it's being given away for nothing. It will cost us a fortune in the long run, but I think what's interesting, and I know you're going to get to it later, but just some of the perverse incentives that this is causing in terms of people telling their employers, hey, I don't necessarily want to come back to work.
Yep. Yes. And my wife has, she's told me some stories that people were saying that as well. So it's interesting that is happening. It's happening, man. People are literally wanting to stay home because they'll collect the extra $600 plus whatever their state's unemployment rate is. And in some cases, I mean, you got to make under, I think, $15 an hour or somewhere about there for it to be, incentivize structure where it's better for you to stay home and make that money. You make more than going to work. So yeah, we'll talk about all that, man. Those are like the unintended consequences that when you print money to like, kind of cover over stuff, you end up creating holes in other areas. I think we give these guys too much credit, meaning like the presidents of all these countries, not just United States, but central bankers, all these central banks and the Federal Reserve. I think we give them a little bit too much credit. They really don't know what they're doing, and they're just trying everything.
No,
they're just throwing everything at the wall.
CB, can you imagine if you decided back in 2009, you know what, honey, I'm going to demo the kitchen. So you brought in a team, you demoed the kitchen, and you took out the refrigerator and the oven and the microwave and the dishwasher and the sink. And you said, but don't worry, I'm going to put this back together and it's going to look better than it ever did before. We're going to have a new backsplash. I'm going to throw in hardwood floors. It's going to look beautiful, all stainless steel, maybe some granite countertops, who knows? And then, 2019 rolls around and your wife is saying to you, hey, when's this project going to be completed? That's essentially what the Federal Reserve has done to the U.S. economy. They slashed interest rates to zero. They kicked off QE. And here it is, CB 2020, interest rates are back at zero. Fed's talking about taking them negative. That argument wouldn't work for you and I as husbands, but for some reason, the American public buys into the notion that these guys have everything under control and they will adhere to their word. Their word is gold. It's just absurd.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's crazy. So tonight, guys, as I've stated, we've got a few. We probably won't get to all of them because I just talk, man. 2 hours goes by like, I don't know, quickly when I'm doing these live streams. It's crazy. But we have a few articles, a few topics that we're going to talk about tonight. Phil, where do you want to start, man?
Well, why don't we kick off with the Paycheck Protection Program? Just going back, we already kind of glossed over it, but in terms of the perverse incentives that offers for people when they are paid to stay home and they're literally telling bosses, hey, I don't want to come to work. And what are you doing trying to make us come back to work? How can we get back on a solid footing? So let's talk about that, man. I think that's a great way to kick off.
Yeah, I agree, man. And I'll drop this link for you guys so you can check it out. It's from Forbes. And, one thing I saw on here, Phil, that really really was crazy was the fact that I'm sure you know about this, but the first round of money that was, distributed went to a lot of companies. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. So number-wise, there weren't that many, but those 75 major companies that got the money, they were getting 10 million a pop. So they were taking up a big chunk of the actual resources that was supposed to go to small businesses. Companies like Shake Shack, we got Ruth Chris, a whole bunch of like major companies that were, some of them publicly traded companies, taking this money, man. And how do you feel about that situation? Is it something, because my mom, she works for a corporation, not that big, but it's a company that she's like, well, no one told us we couldn't take the money. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, you have expenses and you have employees and you want to cover them and make sure they still have a paycheck. How do you feel about like the bigger companies taking it? Should we fault Washington? Should we fault DC for their incompetence or not outlining really the details on that?
Well, what did they expect to happen, right? I mean, really, anytime you erect a new federal program, you're essentially telling the world, hey, this thing is going to get ripped off due to fraud, waste, and abuse. It happens every single time. So whether it's Shake Shack, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, or Sweet Green, this was bound to happen. They had attorneys that looked over this thing and they said, hey, you know what? If you have less than 50 employees per location or whatever it was, then you're considered a small business. But the reality is Shake Shack's got 8,000 employees. So they should have had that moment in their conscience where they said, you know what, this really isn't for us. This is for the little mom and pop shop, like, the coffee shop in a small town in Kentucky that just got absolutely decimated by the coal industry pulling out. And there's just some really sad stories like that all over the country. And it's as a result of these big boys kind of cutting first in line, and they've got the resources, right? They have the CFOs and the law departments and, the controllers and all these professionals who understand how to get first in line. So it's just egregious. And I think a lot of them got taken to the woodshed on this, especially universities.
I was going to say that. Yeah. Harvard, man. And another example, how do they get through to the front of the line? Like, what are they doing? They got some backdoor deal. So they know someone that can just, push the application forward. There's no reason why Harvard, with an endowment of $40 billion, guys, $40 billion, should be taking $10 million. What are they? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense, man.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, I saw Anthony Pompliano tweet a few days ago. Essentially, these universities are operating as tax-free hedge funds. I mean, Harvard's got like a $40 billion endowment, and then it's sneaking in line for this free money in the midst of a crisis. So once it hit the public airwaves, they knew they had to give this money back. And I think, Stanford was first to say, hey, we were thinking about taking it, but we're not going to. So kudos to them. But, why did everybody else have to be shamed into not taking the money? It's really a sad state of affairs.
Yes, exactly. And I dropped a link for you guys, all of you who are, even if you are a gig economy person, you work for Uber, you work for Lyft or whatever, you're still considered, this is not advice, but you do still fall under the sole proprietor. Fill that thing out, people. Try to get the money if you can. Because again, man, this is not the right solution by far. Printing more money is not the right solution. But if we're gonna continue to go down this road, Phil, it's like, hey, man, last time 2008, you gave the middle class nothing. How do you feel about that? Do you think people should really try to go after this money this go around?
Yeah, I do, because it's theirs to begin with. I think you may have seen this viral video. This comedian, he sits in his car and he just yells at the camera. And he was going off about the fact that, look, you hit us with these $1,200 checks. That's great and everything, but it was our money to begin with. People assume that government has something to give away. It doesn't, unless it takes it from one of us first. Government doesn't create any wealth. It merely steals it from one person to give to another. You did not create this bad situation. They did. So you have to take care of your family first.
You make a good point, though. That's one thing people should understand about this whole, the people who got the $1,200. That $1,200 is actually, you're going to owe that back on your taxes in 2020. Did you know that, Phil? So if you take that money and let's say you in 2020 you get a refund for $2,400, well, you'll only get $1,200 because they're taking that back.
Yeah, it's pretty insidious. That was one of the points he made. And the other one he made is, we're out of work. You told us to stay home. We did. And now you're not really giving us any reprieve on the mortgage. You can't just tell people, hey, don't pay your mortgage or rent for 3 months. And then when we open the economy up, you owe us immediately. Put that debt on the back end of the mortgage. Basically, this is almost like a temporary debt jubilee. We have to pretend that this time didn't even exist. In fact, I was even suggesting on Twitter that maybe, and I wouldn't ordinarily agree with this, CB, but maybe the president should have signed an executive order. Hey, whatever your credit score was on March 13th, that should be locked in, because you shouldn't be faulted as a result of staying home, being forced to stay home during a global pandemic.
You know what? But they did try to do something, not exactly that, but there was some law in the first CARES Act, where they were trying to do something with the rating agencies, the credit rating agencies, to do something to that extent. And they said, no, that's going to hurt our business somehow. Whatever they were trying to do with the credit rating agencies, it was going to hurt their business. So they lobbied that one out. So they tried. I don't know which side of the aisle did that or proposed that, but it was something like that proposed. And I agree. And honestly, they should be doing more. I think with the whole college debt thing, something should be done with that as well.
Right.
Clear it out, something.
Yeah.
They can easily do it.
It's going to happen. Now's the time they've been waiting for, frankly. I mean, they've already essentially said you don't have to pay us for 3 months. And I'm already hearing stories about people who've been notified by their student lenders. Yeah, that's true. It's even been updated on their online accounts. So what's going to happen with that? That's just ultimately going to turn into some kind of long-term program, because the economy is going to get wrecked as a result of this. This is not temporary. This is a long-term problem. We can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. A lot of these young people who were duped into going to college to get a liberal arts degree aren't going to have a job waiting for them. They're going to have a massive debt when they get out. So that debt's just going to have to be forgiven. Otherwise, these poor young folks are just going to have to emigrate somewhere else so they can get out from underneath these massive student loans. Yeah,
I agree, man. And we'll see how this pans out. I was actually watching, sometimes I watch this pilot on YouTube, and he was just talking about giving an update on airlines are wrecked globally. It's just a bloodbath out there with the airlines. But I didn't think about it. And this goes to any industry, right? You got a new person who's been training, getting certified for whatever it is that they're doing in their industry. And he was giving an example of these new pilots, man. They've spent all these years and all these flight hours, and they're ready to go and become a commercial pilot. Nothing for them.
Right.
How do you there's so many knock-on effects and unintended consequences from this virus, man. Whether it's man-made, naturally, it doesn't matter. It's just, as you stated, if you think we're going to be back to square one or back to where we were prior to this in 6 months, even 12 months, Phil, you got some real skewed view of reality, in my opinion.
Well, I think that's sort of what your show has been about. I mean, that's kind of the basis of my show, where we're talking about the fact that the Fed created this massive bubble and it was bound to pop. They always do. It burst in the year 2000 with the internet bubble. It burst in 2008 as a result of the housing bubble. So this bubble was going to burst because the laws of economics are just that. They eventually cause these financial bubbles to burst. It happens no matter where you live in the world. Every single country, these laws are applicable. So we knew it would come. We just didn't know what would bring it. And now we discovered it was sort of a black swan, this global pandemic, COVID-19. And like I already said before, we really can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. When entrepreneurs speculate on projects that have no business being in existence, when that tide washes out, I've said it a million times, and I know you've heard the old cliche, like Warren Buffett says, you see who's swimming naked, you can't go back. So right. There's going to be a painful road ahead. Who knows? I'm hoping it's not a greater depression, but unfortunately, I think it will be.
Yeah, I'm not too optimistic myself about what's coming in the future for not only Americans but the globe. But I think because we're like that spoiled child, and then we grow up and then we got to hit the real world, right? And your parents sheltered you and gave you everything, but now it's time for you to get out there, and now you hit the real world and see you can't have everything you want when you want. You got to go out there and work for it. That's how I feel America is going to be coming out the other side of this situation, man. So guys, I did leave again the link for all of you who are, again, independent contractors, sole proprietors. at least go out sba.gov. I left the link in the chat room so you guys can check it out. See, hey, try it. Try and see if you can get anything. I haven't gotten anything myself, so we'll see what happens. But hey, I'm trying to get any and everything from these guys because they have done us wrong, people. Let's go, since we're talking about kind of, bailouts and all that good stuff. Let's talk about zero hedge and this whole. If we now have a situation, as I stated earlier, Phil, where people are now incentivized to stay home, with the whole, and I think it says it in this article that the CARES Act included a $600 a week bonus until July 31st for those registered as unemployed. The $600 is issued in addition to the standard unemployment benefit, which varies by state. And it's crazy because I didn't even realize this. Massachusetts, man, there's a $795 per week. So individuals who are laid off there will get $795 per week plus another $600 per week on top of that. Mississippi having the lowest at $235, I think, per week. So, hey, that's a nice deal, ain't it, Phil?
Yeah, it is. And isn't it interesting that $600 amounts to $15 an hour, more than twice the federal minimum wage? Haven't we heard that over the last several years, CB, that they've been scrambling to get a living minimum wage? And granted, I don't want to sound insensitive to your audience. I want everybody to be able to go out, kill it, and drag it home and be able to feed their families and get the things that they need. I'm not against that at all. But what I'm saying is when government steps in, ultimately what they do is create distortions in the economy so that $15 doesn't go as far as it was supposed to. It just makes matters worse. And we're kind of dealing with that right now, whether it's the Paycheck Protection Program or the $1,200 stimulus checks. It's going to feel good. Peter Schiff kind of compares it to like wetting the bed, right? Mm. Wetting the bed feels good for a second. And then moments later, you realize what you're lying in. And unfortunately, I think that's what we're going to be doing.
I didn't wake up and go to the bathroom?
Yeah, right.
Right. No, I feel you. And, this article talks about, like, again, some of the unintended consequences from this. One being, Phil, that if you have people, now it's more beneficial for them to stay home. Well, guess what? That local coffee shop won't have anyone to work. So they can't even if the economy opens back up, and we're going to talk about this hopefully, you have economies or areas in the country where they're opening back up. Even if they open back up, you're not going to have anyone to work because I get paid more to sit at home, eat popcorn, watch Netflix than to go into work every day. So again, it just piles on one. It just, it's like a snowball, man. It's just going to continue to gather speed and get bigger and bigger as it rolls down that mountain hill. So yeah,
we can't stop it. We're going to go full MMT. I saw it on Twitter. Something about UBI was trending, UBI now. And I know you and I are both opposed to that. But frankly, it's kind of like medical marijuana. You see it on the horizon. It's coming. It's guaranteed. There's no stopping it. So we're going to eventually have to embrace it. And I know that's why you're in this game, the content game. You're trying to give solutions to people, and we'll probably talk about those later. But right now, it's really scary because when you read these stories, by the way, this article that you shared, CB, comes from a guy named Michael Snyder, who folks can find at themostimportantnews.com. I had him on my show. He's a real nice guy, ran for Congress, did not win, probably because he told the truth too much. But, he really...
I'm a follower of his. I haven't been on his site. He used to have a different site, the Economic
Collapse blog or something.
Blog or something like that years ago. I used to, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, he's brilliant.
Yeah, he's a good man. He's been documenting this story for quite some time. And I know you just alluded to it, but this coffee shop story out of Harlan, Kentucky is gut wrenching. And I don't fault the employees, right? Mm-hmm. This is what happens with moral hazard.
Right.
You create perverse incentives for people to do what's best for them, but isn't necessarily best for their loved ones, the economy, even themselves in the long run. So I'm afraid that, unfortunately, this is going to be disastrous for us as we move into a recession, even depression, it's going to be even harder to get folks unhooked off of this cheap money. I mean, all of us would love to just stay home and eat and do nothing and get paid. I mean, isn't that a dream? That's called retirement. But when you're in your working years, 20s and 30s and 40s, that is disastrous because you get used to it. And it's really hard to get off of that. It's almost like a economic heroin.
Yep. No, I agree. You know, and the thing is, Phil, I try to stay pretty down the line as far as my, you know, when we talk about Democrats and Republicans, because they're both to blame. They're both to blame. I think more so the Democrats, but that's another discussion. But in this scenario, you know, as the article states, the Democrats pushed extremely hard to get this provision into the CARES Act. And so, you know, it kind of put the Republicans in a you know, between a rock and a hard place. They had to budge, and they did. So they've got blood on their hands too. You know, they had to participate in getting in passing this portion of it. So it is what it is, and I, you know, like you said, I'm not trying to be harsh. People do need a bridge to the other side, but man, it's just, again, unintended consequences, and I think this is yet another one that's going to really backfire on us. Because Phil, I don't even think, to be honest with you, I do not think July 1st will be that last $600 a week check for people.
No, of course not.
I think it's going to be extended.
Can you imagine heading into the election taking that entitlement program away? I wouldn't want to be that congressman who's got to answer to their constituents. Hey, you know, because like we keep talking here, this isn't going to end on July 31st. The economy is still going to be a basket case by then. So, yeah, they're not going to take it away. It's just, there's nothing that lasts longer than a temporary government program. I mean, look at Nixon closing the gold window in August of 71. Did it ever reopen? He said that was going to be temporary. So,
taxes were also supposed to be temporary as well.
Right.
You know? So, yeah, I mean, No Name in the chat room said, I'm totally against UBI, but if they are going to continue to hand out trillions to everyone except the average person, bring on UBI, give it to the people. And that's how I feel. No lie. That is how I feel. Because ultimately, bro, it's going to get back to their hands anyway, right? You give you do the bottom up strategy. It's still going to get to the 1%. Because hell, they own everything, you know? So it's just that by the time it gets to them, that dollar is going to be, that purchasing power is not going to be the same as if it came from the top down. And that's the way they love to have it. But hey, man, I think we're at desperate times cause, desperate measures. That's just what it is. And we are at that point, man. I think we're at the end of the road. What do you want to talk about next? We got a couple on deck here. Talk about Trump and the U.S. Postal Office. That's a whole situation. That's crazy, man.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. In fact, I was thinking about putting a poll up on my Twitter account after you sent me that article. Should we even have a post office anymore? I know it's one of the few things in the Constitution that we're supposed to have, but government really can't run any organization for a profit. It's always going to have a loss. And these big companies like Amazon have obviously taken advantage of that. Trump's trying to intervene and say, look, you need to raise prices like 4 times so that we can break even or whatever. But I just feel like in this crypto email online world that we really almost don't need it anymore. Like, let's let the free market solve this problem. So what do you think? That's what I wanted to get your
man
take on CB.
Again, I think we're so far down the rabbit hole, Phil, because I agree with you. But what does that do? That lays off how many people? I think there's like 500,000 U.S. I think maybe I'm quoting that wrong. 50,000, maybe so. I don't know how many people work for the USPO, but it's a lot. It's a lot. And where do those people go, Phil? Where do they go?
Yeah, that's what scares me too. That's why we never make these hard decisions, CB.
I know.
Honestly.
Yep. We can kick. We just can kick. So yeah, I'm looking here now, Phil. 500,000 postal workers. That's a lot of people, man. If we do what should be done, what free markets, quote unquote, should be, yeah, we don't need maybe a tenth of that, 50,000, 100,000. We don't need that many workers for it to run efficiently.
Well, and I'm not saying we need to go the route of that CEO who shut down his scooter company over Zoom and laid off over 400 employees. Oh, actually, he didn't do it. He had his assistant do it because he didn't have the courage to look them in the eye. I'm suggesting we need a long-term plan to unwind this agency that's costing us a fortune and hand it off to the free market where there's profit and loss signals so that it can be run efficiently.
So, I agree. And so I would assume that you agree with Donald Trump on this one, as far as, hey, this is the kind of the background on this article, guys. I'll drop it in the chat room. But essentially, it's too long. I can't even drop it in there for you guys. But essentially, Trump is like, look, you guys want a piece of this bailout? You guys got to up those prices. You can't be sending out a piece of mail at a loss. Millions of parcels out at a loss every day. Who does that? Only when you got a government agent. Are they private or are they owned by the government? There's been a lot of debate and stuff over that, Phil. Do you know that?
Well, I mean, like I said, it's
but
one of the only things in the Constitution that we're supposed to have as a post office. It made sense back then. I mean, when you think about it, how else would you communicate if not for a government mail service, I guess? But I mean, some folks could probably even take exception back then. There probably would have been free market competition to come in. But no organization misunderstands the profit and loss signals than a government organization. I mean, think about it, CB. If you were running a war in Afghanistan or Iraq, and you had an income statement and a balance sheet, wouldn't you look at that thing and be like, hey, you know what? I think it's time to bring these boys home. This is costing us a fortune.
Yep. Agreed. And
so
we've
got,
it's
no different.
Yeah, you're right. Trump here quoted, the post office service is a joke because they're handing out packages for Amazon and other internet companies, and every time they bring a package, they lose money on it. He's telling the truth, man. The post office should raise their prices of packages by approximately 4 times. The issue is, Mr. Trump, you raise the price 4 times, guess who? They pass it on to us. Amazon will pass that cost right on to us. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Don't you think that might put them out of business, CB? Or at least take their hands off the monopoly grip that they seem to have if they had to suddenly raise prices? People might think, I mean, I just ordered some chocolates because I'm stuck at home. I don't want to go to the grocery store. I don't want to go to the pharmacy. So I'm lazy. I ordered them. And it took over 2 weeks for those things to show up. I don't even know how much I paid in shipping, but I suspect that I got those for less than what I would pay in the grocery store. Mm-hmm. Haven't you and I always kind of felt in our guts like this is too good to be true ever since we got our first Amazon package? I mean, I remember when it showed up on the doorstep. And I was like, how much longer can this really go on? So Amazon's great. I'm a customer. I love it. But don't we know deep down that this really shouldn't last?
It's unsustainable. Absolutely. But it should be. Like, you got to think, man, like Amazon got this big because of these unrealistic rates, right? And the post office being in bed with them. So I think you're right. If they increase rates, Amazon will become more competitive. That whole paradigm will be shifted a little bit on the curve. So, and this is on, this comes under the backdrop of a post office that was already in trouble. We got to remember that, people. The post office are already severely on the edge of getting out of here, kicking the can. I mean, of course, we would bail them out, but I'm just saying that, annual revenue for in 2007 was, I think, 72 billion. And mail volume was down 31% in 2007. So the trajectory was already heading lower. The agency in 2007 had around 120 billion in unfunded debt and obligations, most of which flow from compensation and benefits owed to its significant cohort of employees and retirees. And that's a whole nother conversation, Phil. Pensions, bloated, you know. What do you think about that? I mean, they could possibly fix some of their issues by possibly restructuring some of these retirement benefits. I don't know. Is that the right way to go?
No, I think what they're going to do is they're going to go the route that governments always go. They're going to hyperinflate the currency so that those unfunded promises are much cheaper for them to actually pay the workers that they promised. This is the way governments always do it. Government is better than anyone at over-promising and under-delivering. I mean, look at Venezuela. I've got a friend who has family still down there. One of them was a federal employee. Can you imagine? You know, you work hard your whole life. You expect to retire with dignity and sit out on the beach or maybe tour the Grand Sabana or do all sorts of different things that you hope to do when you didn't have to work anymore. And then here they go full Keynesian road to serfdom. And your pension is essentially worthless. You're not going to be retiring with dignity. You're going to be a Walmart greeter until the day you pass, unfortunately. And I think that's what we have coming here in the United States. I mean, folks in the alternative finance community say, look, the idea of retirement through history, that's a relatively new concept. I mean, you think about 10,000 years ago, did people have a retirement plan? No, they just worked until they couldn't work any longer, and then their kids took care of them, and then the generations just did that time and time again. You know, I think retirement is going to go the way of the one-income household, unfortunately, here in the United States.
Agreed. Let's go ahead and get Donald Trump here on. Donald Trump, how are you there, buddy?
Oh, I'm doing great. And by the way, it's 10-pound Trump to you, Crypto Blood. How you doing, my guy?
10-pound Trump in the building, ladies and gentlemen. What's going on, man? What's your thoughts on what we've been talking about here so far? I know you got an opinion on it.
Oh, for a matter of fact, actually. I believe that the same thing that happened with Bernie Madoff and the pension funds then is just going to be the same outcome this time around, but this time actually far worse because of what Mr. Kennedy explained. You know, I think it's literally just a disaster, honestly, and the domino is already starting to fall, and you know, this is not going to end well for people that are expecting this monetary relief. So speaking of monetary relief, I also want to touch base on one of the reasons why people aren't getting their checks, you know, their $1,200 stimulus checks. And it's because me, Donald Trump, 10-pound Trump, decided that I wanted to put my signature on every single check that I mail.
Oh, no, man. That didn't delay anything, man. You're listening to too much liberal. You're listening to too much TV, which is all controlled by the liberal, by the left anyway. So, you know, they're going to put their spin on it. You really think it was delayed because of Donald Trump's signature?
Oh, man. You know, I just did that to trigger you, bro. I really did.
Oh, man. So what do you know, we always talk about, like, problems, right? A lot of these YouTube channels, they always talk about the problem. I don't never really hear them get down to the nitty-gritty on what the solution is. Like, how do we fix that situation with you know, people making more money staying at home than going to work? Like, is it too late? Is the cat out of the bag?
What it comes down to is raising the minimum wage, okay? Having a mandatory pay rate once the workforce does get back out into the field. And, you know, business as usual is, you know, reinstated, if you will. So, which I'm not sure when it's going to happen. It's this right now, we're in uncharted waters. This situation right now is just unprecedented, really. But yeah, the only way is.
Phil, what do you think, man? Like, What is the solution? I don't think we talked about necessarily a solution to the whole 12, not necessarily the 1,200 that we got, but more so the 600 additional for unemployment.
Well, first off, I'm distracted by 10-pound skills. I mean, I've been on your show 3 times now, and each time he's rolled out some new skill that I didn't know he had. So, man, I'm impressed.
Oh man, I
This
didn't
guy
know Trump
knows
was
what he's
black on the
doing
inside.
technologically.
Yeah, right. He's advanced for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I stick with my tried and true, which is that this $1,200, although it is our money, it's not going to do anyone any good. They're just buying us temporarily to keep our mouths shut while they go out and bail out all these hedge funds through reverse repos and all of. Danielle DiMartino Booth said there's like 40 different Fed programs right now. I mean, look at the balance sheet. Look at the national debt. We're over 24.7 trillion. I mean, I can't even keep up. I have the national debt on the intro of my program. And I got to change it like every few days.
Right. Yeah, no lie.
It's extreme because if you look at the asset prices right now on, crude oil and gold and all these other commodities, the dollar to price ratio compared to what's actually being traded on the books right now is completely out of whack. Like the rates just aren't there like at all. Like what do you guys think about crude oil closing literally negative $30, negative $50 literally this week? I believe it was this week.
Yeah, it was that was a technical kind of situation. I don't want to call it a black swan, but everything lined up for that month, that forward month, to have it close in a negative. And basically, Cushing, Oklahoma, couldn't take any more oil, and then the contract is expiring, and it was like 3 or 4 different things that kind of lined up for that to happen. We'll see if it happens again this month, but just lets you know, at least for me, and Phil, you can chime in. To me, this only kind of brings more credit to my theory that we're going to have a deflationary spiral first. And we're seeing that in commodities, at least in oil. We'll see what happens. I still think that, gold is going to head lower first before heading higher. I don't know. Phil, let me know. Chime in on that.
Yeah, what's the old expression? Sometimes the decades happen in weeks. What we're seeing right now, we're kind of distracted because we're at home. A lot of us aren't going to work. We're homeschooling our kids, some of us for the first time, most of us for the first time. So we're heavily distracted. Maybe we have a family member who could be ill as a result of COVID-19. And we're not really paying attention to the financial calamities taking place out there. But what happened with oil this week? What was that, April 20th? 420?
Oh, yeah, 420.
Yeah, was just phenomenal. That day, people were saying, look, books will be written about this someday. The fact that this commodity, you would have to pay people almost like the garbage to take it off your hands. And a lot of people got wrecked. I was watching Twitter there.
Yes.
A lot of these CNBC folks were commenting, look, what you're witnessing right now, there's some trading desk just totally blew up. And I imagine someone made a profit off of it, shorting it. But I feel like probably a lot more people were hurt in the carnage.
That was unprecedented from that perspective, from trading, because I'm going to tell you why. Because now, when you short, Phil, you have essentially unlimited upside risk or downside risk because you're short, right? But the price of that particular asset can go to an infinity, theoretically speaking. But no one ever thought you buying an asset, you will have unlimited risk as well. Because it could go past zero and go into the negative.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
It's because they didn't want to actually deliver on these future contracts. Nobody really has any sort of demand for oil. As you guys know, airliners, tankers, oil tankers are literally just being put on the sideline. Literally, they're sitting, waiting for this calamity to essentially be over right now. I mean, really, oil fuels global economy and consumption. And it's just a true representation of what's actually going on in the economy when oil capitulates like this. It's insane if you think about it.
Mm-hmm. I would almost call it hyper capitulation.
Yeah.
You know, it is insane. It really is. Just shows you where we are. And again, this is not going to be over in 6 weeks, in 6 months. This is going to take some mighty long time to kind of restructure this global economy, man. I mean, every day there's something new. We got Kim Jong-un, looks like he's out of here. So that adds another element to the whole situation. I know it's not on the list of topics tonight, Phil, but what's your take on that? What kind of geopolitical situation are we going to find ourselves in with Kim Jong-un out of here, it looks like?
Well, of course, I took to Twitter once I immediately read the news on TMZ, and I said, socialism taking yet again another life. You know, this guy, was he even 40 years old? Goes in for heart surgery?
He was 36.
Right.
36,
so he hadn't
man.
even reached the age of 40. It just goes to show you would much rather be a poor person in a semi-capitalist country like the United States. Mind you, I said semi, and we're probably down to like we're like 2% capitalist now at this point. But I would much rather be a poor person in the United States than the wealthiest person of all in a communist, socialist society like North Korea.
Hey, Phil, what do you think about the people coming to the realization that they literally worshiped a false idol, somebody that was proclaiming to be a god?
Yeah, you feel bad for those folks because they almost are suffering through a real life Potemkin village or, a Milgram experiment where they're told, hey, you know what happens to people who go against the regime? They end up disappearing and they end up in a camp and no one ever hears from them again. The reality is if they could all organize and come together, they could easily overthrow that regime and install a new government and possibly be a prosperous nation just north of South Korea, adopt that economic model. So this could lead to that. And a lot of these talking heads are saying, hey, there's going to be some upheaval now because there's no heir apparent as a result of Kim Jong-un's early demise. So we'll see where things head. On a more personal note, though, 10-pound at CB, I heard someone say, hey, you know what? North Korea holds about nearly $700 million worth of Bitcoin. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But this person was suggesting that potentially we will see some volatile days ahead for the Bitcoin and crypto markets. So I wanted to get your reaction to that because I personally don't know about that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've heard that they own a lot as well, but I don't know how much. But my question would be, what would cause them? Why would that be a sell event for North Korea just because their leader died? I don't know if that particularly would be a sell event in my book. I don't know. What do you think, 10-pound?
I don't think it'd be a sell event either. But the way that they acquired that Bitcoin was, of course, through illegal means. They did a lot of cyber attacks. And they hijacked a few machines to generate some hash power as well to hit the pools. So honestly, if they do choose to let it rain out in the free market and somebody else buys it up, then yeah, sure, I consider that to be a win for the ecosystem. So yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't personally feel I don't see that as a sell event.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah,
I was kind of confused, and I'm glad you guys agree. By the way, for folks watching on CB's YouTube channel, I'm rebroadcasting over on Twitter. We got the great John Kim saying, yo, he likes seeing Donald Trump here on Crypto Blood Show. I think everybody's getting a kick out of this, man.
Oh, man, this is epic right here. This is epic. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't think that's a real event, in my opinion. I don't see that as a headwind for Bitcoin, but we shall see. My buddy today was joking with me, though, and said he wouldn't be surprised if Kim Jong-un had some type of device in his heart when it stopped. It just set off all the nukes.
Man, those nukes
that would be bad, right?
And those nukes wouldn't get anywhere near, besides South Korea, they wouldn't get anywhere near mainland USA. There's no way. I don't think he had that sort of tech at the time. or still, I still don't think they have that sort of tech. So
Well,
Yeah.
have you
Go ahead,
have you
Phil.
guys seen the photo of the woman that they say could potentially replace him?
This is sister, right?
Is it his sister?
Yeah, it's his sister. That's his
She's a
sister.
scary looking
So
person.
is this actually confirmed? The news that I've been hearing today, they're saying that this is unconfirmed news and it's coming straight out of Japan. So is this a psyop or is this legit? Like, what's going on? I heard he's in a vegetative state, but not actually confirmed deceased. So
Yeah, I don't know. You know, in this bizarro upside down world, man, when TMZ calls it, it's pretty official.
what, bro? They called it. That's nuts.
That's what I'm hearing. Phil, did you hear that as well? I didn't see the actual
Yeah.
article.
Yeah, I heard that as well. I mean, of course, there were outlets reporting over the last couple days that he had gone through surgery. It didn't go well. He was in a semi-vegetative state. Some people got ridiculed for calling the death too early, so they got labeled fake news all over again. But I think it was the Japanese who have now found the smoking gun that he is no longer with us.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. George Cosmos says capitalism is dead. How do you feel? I almost, honestly, I agree with him. I don't want to hear any type. I don't want to hear what's my guy name on YouTube on CNBC. He's part of the whole Mr. Wonderful. He's on the what's that show on CNBC?
Shark Tank.
Shark Tank.
Tank.
Mr. Wonderful came on last week or earlier this week saying that capitalism is still alive and so on and so forth. And I was so pissed off, bro, because he's only saying that because he's benefiting from basically moral hazard. Like he can go out and make any risky bets and investments and get bailed out by Donald Trump, who we were talking to right now. So I don't see capitalism being alive anymore, man. I don't even know. Can you guys tell me when capitalism was last even seen?
We've had a pulse, I'd say before 2007. That was like the real.
Really? Phil, what do you think?
1912.
I see what you did there.
I wasn't gonna go back that far, but I definitely wasn't gonna go only back to 2007. I'm gonna pick 1971.
Yeah, that's a fair one too.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I was trying to go over the top with you guys because of the Federal Reserve. But my personal position is you can't have a capitalist society with a central bank. We tried for a little while. We did okay. We were still on a gold standard. But once you have a central bank, in my opinion, that's when you abandon capitalism. So the real problem started about 40 years before 1971.
But you know what, man? I think capitalism doesn't exist when you don't allow capital, like destructive behavior in the market. You have to allow businesses to die. It's almost like a forest, right? You have the forest fires come through. You have to have that to kind of reinvigorate the soil to have that cycle go all over again. And we stopped that, man. And I guess I can see where Tim Pound is saying that 07 was the end of it, because that's when we really started to bail out any and everyone. And actually it's funny because I heard someone say, I can't remember who, this was like yesterday, they were like, Tesla would not even exist without the bailouts of GM, Chrysler, and Ford. Or Ford didn't take the bailout, but you get what I'm saying. Like if they had to restructure, downsize, pivot, they would become more innovative, and they would have done something like a Tesla, in my opinion.
Totally. And SpaceX as well, they received a lot of money from the federal government too, during hard times, during a few Falcon launches. So, the government is just playing sugar daddy nowadays. So, it's the way it is.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, can I ask you guys something?
Absolutely.
Starting with you first, CB. So I'm always on the lookout in my local area for malinvestments. This is a little hobby of mine. Most people aren't nerds, so they don't think this way, but I do. I'm looking around the economy. I see certain businesses that pop up. And over the last 5 years, there have been lots of different businesses that came out of the blue where I thought, you know what? Is that really necessary? Do we really have the savings as a society to maintain something like this? And I know things like Peloton and Tesla kind of are the poster children for getting poked fun at when it comes to companies that maybe they shouldn't be around. But I like to think more on a smaller level. And while I'm chatting here, maybe you two can think. But for me, my go-to, the thing I'm always poking fun at, my family's tired of hearing me say it, but the microbreweries. It seems like everybody and their brother opened a microbrewery in the last 3 years. They were like, this has been my dream. I always wanted to make craft beer, and you ought to come down to my place. And you know what? Like, I could go every weekend for the next year here in the DC area or more, visiting a new microbrewery. And I'm like, how long is this really sustainable when you've got the big three, Anheuser-Busch and Coors and all the others? A microbrewery and a craft beer is something that you can only really afford in good times. So I wanted to get your take on that, CB.
That's interesting. I never thought about the microbrewery. I was trying to think of one while you were talking. Well,
you like cigars? Could it be like more cigar shops? Something fancy that people.
Here in Michigan, what would it be? I don't even know, but I know you're right. You're totally right. I can't think of any right now. I think really, to be honest with you, it's not even what I see, and you probably see this too. I see more construction development, like, you know what I'm saying, like commercial development. It's been, especially here in Michigan and Detroit area, man, we've been building like crazy, and all this time I'm just thinking like there isn't this much demand here in Detroit for all these new buildings to be renovated and gutted and spent hundreds of millions of dollars on. And you know what I'm saying? And that stuff wouldn't have happened if we didn't have easy money. So for me in my area, Phil, it's more on the commercial side, commercial development, that I'm seeing so much malinvestment that's just going to come back and bite. I don't know who. I don't know, but it's definitely going to end in a bad way.
Phil,
10 pound. What do you see in your area?
Here's the thing. I'm actually in the Metro Washington D.C. area as well, just on the outskirts. I live in Loudoun County, so
okay.
Yeah,
I'm in
I know exactly what you're referring to, Philip. And it's not just that. I think also, there's tons of tiny little mom and pop diners and like small little franchises that are going to be taking a hit as well, outside of that specific niche of hospitality. So for sure. And you go into these restaurants and there's like nobody sitting down for lunch, like ever. You go into the restaurant for like dinner, you'll see maybe like 4 families, 5 families tops. It's like, how is this even sustainable before a crisis? It kind of blew me away. It blows my mind. Some people, they're just either too, much hustle and bustle in their life to the point where they're like grabbing something to go and then heading home to the family. They don't actually have time to sit down and eat at a regular restaurant anymore for the most part. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe they're getting a lot of their clientele getting takeout, and maybe that's how they're making up for sales. Who knows? We are living in the gig economy where you can get just about anything delivered to you.
Hey, you just said it. That's another example, Phil. The gig economy, Uber Eats, DoorDash. Those are unsustainable business models.
Yep.
They're not making money off that stuff, man. From what my latest understanding, they're not making money off these Uber Eats. I think Uber itself is profitable finally for their ride sharing platform, but the delivery of food side of things is that type of stuff wouldn't be sustainable if it weren't for easy money going into their stocks and propping everything up, and in my opinion. So, and then of course the VC capital, exactly. So let's see who we got. Let's see who we got on the phone here, guys. We got a caller on the line. It's your boy Crypto Blood. I got Phil Kennedy on with us tonight as co-host. Who's calling in?
Hey, Rob from Hunger for Knowledge. What's up, fellas?
Rob, what's going on, man? Thanks for calling in tonight.
What's happening? I mean, we're in the middle of a unprecedented situation, right? Like, it was funny. You were talking about the there's these couple big mall plazas that are two of them. Their businesses went out of business, and the stores were closed. They were a sporting goods store and an electronics store, and they both were closed for like 6 months. And like during that 6 months, across the street, they built a whole new and had all these empty stores. I'm like, what?
That's exactly what's happening here too. Yep, it's exactly what's happening here. I'm seeing strip malls that are at 20% occupancy, but then across the street they're building a whole new strip mall.
Well, that has to do with like the cheap money, right? So they can get the money cheap, and they're building that thinking going forward they're gonna make a lot of money off that, right? That's my thought process of why they're doing that. But it does. I mean, but if you can't fill it, what's the matter? Especially now, how are you gonna fill? I was driving. I had 2 weeks ago. I had to go get my work is so it. You still they give out paychecks. They don't even have direct deposit. That's a whole nother thing. It's kind of silly, but. So I had to go get my paycheck, and I work in Harrisburg, PA. So, but I noticed I've been laid off, and I noticed on my way driving up there that all these commercial real estate places empty, and all the signs, like probably twice as many just in the month I've been laid off since I've been there. So obviously it's happened. You know, these things are the commercial real estate is starting to get slammed. So I don't know how you can, I mean, and you were talking about like, what's that, the Airbnbs and all that stuff. Like, who's going to go on vacation? Even if everything stopped yesterday or today, who'd have enough?
My wife is struggling, man, with anxiety, with going out, and this kind of leads into our next topic, which is about this coronavirus. And actually, what we're about to talk about is something I've been following for about a month and some change now. No credit to me myself. I've just been following some sources like NTD News and some other good quality content I'm seeing on YouTube, which honestly, I'm surprised they haven't like banned them. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're putting out some really good content on YouTube, but they've been saying for the longest that this virus does not hold an immunity for long at all. It's almost like the common cold. And if you think about it, the coronavirus there are 4 different coronaviruses that cause the common cold. So if this is coronavirus on steroids mixed with SARS and HIV and all this other stuff, that would make sense for more evidence coming out, people, that there is no long-term vaccine for this virus. It's something we will have to live with, and maybe create pharmaceuticals that will help mitigate some of the extreme cases. And I think that's where the silver lining in this is. I think at some point we will have pharmaceuticals for this virus. If we can't get a vaccine up and running, I think we'll at least have a pharmaceutical to say, okay, you get the COVID, take this. You'll be kind of down for a week or so, but at least you'll be able to live through the symptoms and not die. You know what I'm saying? So this is out of Business Insider. Scientists fear the hunt for a coronavirus vaccine will fail, and we will have to live with the constant threat of COVID-19. And again, this is not just one source. There are now more and more scientists coming out talking about this. UK chief medical officer warned on Friday that there is concerning evidence suggesting that people can be reinfected with the virus. I've seen some stories out there, Phil, that people are being tested for the antibody, and they had the virus, they test for the antibody and they don't have the antibody. So if I'm a human being that gets this virus and I can't produce enough antibodies to stay in my body permanently, then a vaccine means nothing, because that's what a vaccine does. It puts a small portion of the virus in your body so that you can create antibodies for it. So it's an interesting state if that's going to be the case. Phil, what are your thoughts, and what does our world look like with COVID-19 being a continual threat?
Yeah, it's certainly going to be disruptive. I mean, that's the simple way to put it. I think this is almost worse than 9/11 from that aspect, because sure, 9/11 affected the people in New York City and at the Pentagon, but those of us across the fruited plain really didn't suffer, a direct threat. I mean, you're more likely to be killed from an anvil falling on you than by a terrorist, statistically speaking. But my bigger issue, CB, and this is where you and I might differ a little bit, is I don't want to be a guinea pig for some new vaccine that they want to roll out. In fact, I took a poll on my Twitter page, and I found out that only 15% of my followers would allow Bill Gates to let his flu juice loose in their caboose.
He said Bill Gates.
I'm not taking no.
No, we don't disagree, Phil. I'm not taking a vaccine either.
Yeah.
I'm not. If they did come out with one, no. Go ahead, Rob.
There was a report that came out of New York that they tested 3,000 people, and 14% of them had antibodies in their. So only 14%. So it was like 256 people.
Let's say that again.
3,000 people.
Oh.
14% of 3,000 people.
Wait, so 3,000 people they tested 3,000 infected people?
Yeah.
Or it was just 3,000 random people?
No, 3,000 infected people.
Oh, okay, that makes a difference.
Had antibodies.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, man. I mean, think about it, though. Like, if it literally is a super cold, basically like a super, bioengineered type of cold, then yeah, we don't have there's a reason. And I actually was watching some scientists, some virologists actually talk about why we don't have a corona vaccine for the other 4 that are, cause common colds. And I forgot what they said. And it's not because this virus mutates too fast. It doesn't. It's not like the flu. The flu mutates very quickly. That's why we always have to have a new vaccine every year, A and B, right? The most prevalent ones we get vaccines for. This RNA one doesn't mutate as much, but it's something else that it does or doesn't do to where it almost tricks our body to not create enough antibodies to last us for it. Like, it's like it tricks it to thinking, oh, it's not that bad, but it really is. And I was just like, man, this would change everything. This would change everything, in my opinion.
But doesn't
it
that
sure
go to
will.
say maybe this? I was just gonna say this is kind of go towards more proof that it's a bioweapon.
Yeah, to me it
Because
does.
that would be designed that way. And I mean,
Trump, I know you want to chime in, Trump. You're telling people to use Lysol and chlorine and Clorox to possibly, is that gonna work? He looks off to the side, like maybe we can look into that.
Not only that, I think you should also do chloroquine. Just chloroquine from fish tanks. Don't worry about the hydroxy part. Just chloroquine. All right?
Yeah, man. Just do the chloroquine. Or I'm not even gonna pick on my man. My man that called in that said we should try. What did he say we should try? Terrapin, or I forgot what he said.
Turpentine.
Turpentine. Yeah, turpentine. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So what do you, Rob? What do you? Well, let me get 10 pound first, man. If we're in a scenario where the vaccine, there is none. Okay, we just got to face the facts. Trying to develop some pharmaceuticals to at least help us through it, and like I said, it would probably, at the end of the day, the pharmaceuticals would probably lower the death rate as well. because, you know, people wouldn't get as extreme with the sickness. But what are your thoughts? If we can't have a vaccine, what does that do to the landscape of business, our psyche, everything?
I'd say definitely long crypto and VR at that point. Really, like, that's all I can really say when it comes to like business and merger and acquisitions and these different sorts of operations that are going to be happening from digital boardrooms. Like, they're going to need to have that like tech. Also, semiconductor companies, you know, server requirements are going to be going through the roof. You know, Amazon's already seeing a massive spike and surge of errors in, actual fail of service because of tons of traffic just traveling right through the AWS ecosystem. So, yeah, man, I'd say right now is a great time to just try to stay positive, because this is all just speculation. When it comes down to the whole medical side of things, there's still a lot to be, trialed and tested and to be discovered when it comes to this COVID-19 fiasco. But yes, I have to say I do agree with Rob and, of course, you, Crypto Blood, when it comes down to the premise of this being a bioweapon manufactured from Wuhan, China, the CCP.
Well, dang, you didn't have to get that specific, but cool. Phil,
I'm role playing Trump right now. It's
you're Trump. I forgot Trump. I'm sorry, Trump.
Well,
Phil.
CB, yeah, I mean, you were on my show. Things kind of blew up between Trader of Futures there, Matty Greenspan, calling it the China virus. I memed it. It was one of the finer points recently on Kennedy
that
Financial.
was an epic show.
Yeah, thanks. It was fun, but the reality is, me, Phil Kennedy, personally, I don't think it helps in situations like this to point the finger at anyone and blame them. Let's just figure out the solution. But the reality is that regardless of how I feel, a lot of people, especially if they lose a loved one to this, they're going to believe that this was created in the Wuhan laboratory and it was a bioweapon that had SARS and HIV mixed in with it. And it was created to be super deadly and take out a whole bunch of innocent people. And if that's what they believe, it's going to be pretty hard to change their minds. So what does that do to a nation moving forward? I don't think it's really healthy to have all of this animosity towards people who are really far away, especially many of whom had nothing to do with this problem. I mean, it was that Wuhan doctor who was the whistleblower, and he's no longer with us. I mean, we saw it on Twitter. He put his thumbprint on that letter. He said, look, this is more serious than they're letting on. This looks to be, the worst flu I've ever seen. And he ended up succumbing to it. So I'm just afraid of how our relations are going to develop moving forward. I think that's going to be another downside to the recession and depression that we're heading into.
Totally. But Kennedy, not only that, but also his colleague, a close doctor that he worked hand in hand with, also caught the disease, and his skin turned incredibly dark. Like he went from being, pale gentleman to literally looking like he had sunbathed for about, over a week.
I said it looked like he went to play on the set of Tropical Storm. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. That's how it is.
Like, I get so annoyed with this whole leadership business, because it's like, when you're president of your country is so short-sighted to come out and call something a Chinese virus, not understanding, the implications of that, how people are going to treat a whole community, instead of coming out and saying, we're gonna investigate and find out exactly what happened in the, with the government. Because when you generalize and say Chinese, you're putting everybody, the government with the people, and we can see. Just look, he comes out and tells people, he said what he said about the bleach, and people actually did that. If they're willing to do that, their critical thinking so poor that they're willing to do that, what are they going to do to, how are they going to treat another person when you say something like that? Right. That's what, and it's the same thing with the mask thing. We all know that the masks are important. If he would just come out and wear a mask, the mask controversy would be over. If he came out and wore the mask,
lead by example. I agree. Lead by example.
Exactly.
And
it would have been. It would.
And Phil,
Sorry.
I know we kind of disagree on, opening back up, right? As far as opening the economy back up, you think more that should be done sooner than later. I think we should just have more pain for a shorter time and more gain in the long run. Not saying that this lockdown is going to eliminate the virus. That's not even the point of it. It's just to kind of slow things down. But I would be up for a lift the ban for everyone if it was mandatory that you wore a mask, because we know there's enough evidence out there to show if you just had everyone wear a mask, it's gonna be like we're on lockdown, but we're not. Yeah.
Well, as you alluded to, this is probably one of the few areas where you and I disagree on nearly anything. I'm a civil libertarian. I have my deeply held libertarian beliefs. And as a result, sometimes I have to take positions that are seemingly unpopular on the surface. And maybe if I can just explain where I come from on that, it'll help your audience better understand what I mean. I used to be an ocean lifeguard back in college. And sometimes the surf would get pretty bad here on the East Coast. We have big rip currents. They suck out people, and it would not be uncommon to have to go out and rescue an entire family, kids, mom and dad, and everything. And on those big days, we would explain to folks, look, if we leave at the end of the day, you should not go back in the ocean. And 99.9% of those people would agree. You know what? My life is precious. I'm not going to go swimming. But unfortunately, every once in a while, we'd get the news the following morning, hey, someone drowned on 62nd Street. And, their body was pulled out this morning or whatever. And that's really sad. But we don't want to dot the beach with police officers, right? People go to the beach because they want to enjoy themselves. And I really have a problem with government stepping in and telling people where they can sit, the kind of milk they're allowed to drink, who's allowed to do your hair because they have a certain kind of license. That stuff really bothers me. And one of the things that bothers me more than anything is the idea, for some people, going to church is an essential it's an essential service. They feel like their soul needs to be fed as much as their bodies. And so that's where you and I disagreed a little bit, CB. I think, if somebody wants to go to church, they should be allowed to. They shouldn't have to wear a mask. If that's their decision. Frankly, I wouldn't do it because my wife wouldn't want me to, but everybody is the master of their own destiny. And, seeing these moms get arrested at parks and seeing these pastors getting arrested, in a drive-in service, it bothers me. So I wanted to get your reaction. And
okay. No, you make good points, but my whole thing is, I think when we have a situation where these are unprecedented times, and in order to keep the public safety at a certain level, I think you got to take extraordinary measures. I almost attribute, and I said this, I think on last weekend's stream, I'm like, well, how's a mandatory mask type of law any different than in many states? It's mandatory that you wear a seatbelt in a car. How is that any different? Do you see that different, Phil, or you see those as one and the same?
Well, essentially, a good civil libertarian would be against that too, right? I mean, This is my life. I can endanger myself. I mean, we've grown accustomed to that over time, because when your body is moving at 75 miles an hour and becomes a projectile going through the windshield, then you're kind of ignoring the non-aggression principle. You've turned yourself into a missile, right? I just see the mask thing a little differently, because I can put on a mask and I don't want to see police officers ripping a guy off a bus or a subway who's just going to work trying to make ends meet because he didn't have a mask. I just think we're setting a terrible
even if he's
precedent.
Putting the public at danger from a health perspective.
Well, I mean, do we really have to use force to rip him off a subway or a bus? I mean, one of these Twitter people I follow, they pointed out, hey, how come these officers don't have masks to give out? Why not try to solve the problem that way? Anytime I see law enforcement getting involved and using force for a simple issue, I mean, we had that mother in Idaho getting pulled out of the park and her kids were left behind and the other moms are screaming, hey, what are we going to do about these kids? That they arrested her anyway. I think it's.
What did she get arrested for?
Being in the park and when she wasn't supposed to, and in Idaho of all places. I mean, man,
Wow.
It seems like there's enough space out there for everyone.
Right. They're doing social distancing by default out there. Rob, what do you think? What do you think about the whole lockdown, or should people be able to do what they please, even at the putting the public at risk?
I mean, I'm big on the right stuff, and I understand that whole point, and I think it's right, but this is kind of a different scenario. I mean, you look at other cultures, they wear masks when there's not even a pandemic going on if they're sick.
Right.
We have this stigma about the mask. I don't understand it. I mean, we're just talking about wearing a mask. We're not talking about getting your firstborn. We're talking about wearing a mask. And my personal belief is that it's my responsibility as taking into other people. I don't want to make somebody sick. If I'm sick and I don't know it and I cough, I don't want to get somebody else sick that has family members. I mean, I know somebody that his family has been he's had a couple family members die. He's got people sick. And I would hate to think that I went to the store and was infected and had somehow caused his family members to be affected by this. And all I could have done is, when there's a lot of scientific proof, to wear a mask. And I could have just simply done that, and I don't think we're asking a lot of people to do things. Now, when it comes to rights, we get every day we're getting rights stripped from us. And the whole rights thing, I understand, but I see people protesting, not wearing masks, shoulder to shoulder in my area at the state capitol. They're protesting about not wearing masks, but yet have no. You think they'd be protesting about the amount of money that's being stolen from them every day. All these financial things that are happening to us. I don't see any protests for that, but I see, I understand that they don't want to be stuck in the house, but how much longer will this last if we don't take care of this problem? What happens if there's a second wave and we're not even through the first wave? Why not? Man.
Not even if. I mean, we look at, I saw someone in the chat room talking about Sweden. They're taking, I don't know if Phil, you know about this. They're taking a different approach, a really, really liberal approach to this. They're like, hey, we're not doing any lockdowns. We're just going to let this virus ride out. And I said it on Twitter. I had the hashtag of Cryptodamus on this one, Phil. I said it's going to be a Wuhan 3.0. I mean, look, they're already having an issue. They're having spikes in cases. This was a Forbes article from yesterday, and so it looks like they reached I think 2,000 deaths as of yesterday. Another 131 deaths there, and I wish I had the graph that would compare Sweden to its other nations around there. The Scandinavian, I think, is what they refer to, but the other countries like Denmark and what's the other ones around Sweden, Phil? I can't remember.
Yeah, Norway,
Denmark. Yeah, they're all way lower. I wish I had the chart because I saw it on Twitter, but it just illustrates, man. I don't think that's the right path to take. I just don't think it's gonna. And we'll see. This is all opinion at this point, Phil.
Well, CB, let me ask you this: when do you think things should get back to normal? I mean, I do this with my friends and family. We got to pick a date. I mean, by what date would it be absurd that you can't walk into a barber shop and get a haircut? Which, by the way, looking at me, you can tell I'm long overdue for.
I think Easter would be the perfect day.
Mr. Trump, Easter is past.
Easter of next year.
Easter of next year.
Oh, Easter of next year.
Special
Okay.
day.
That's why I like you, Trump. That's why I like you.
Hilarious.
Well,
because we're getting news here in Virginia, me and 10 Pound, that top Virginia health official warns state lockdown could be a 2-year affair. If that's the case, man, I'm moving. I'm going to head out west to Tennessee, someplace where I can have freedom
But the virus doesn't have any boundaries. That's what I want people to understand. There's no invisible wall at each border of these states. And so what will happen is you'll have people like you, Phil. They'll all migrate to other cities that aren't really, dealing with and it'll just infect over there. So if we run away from the problem, I don't think it's going to. I think people who want to open up now are kind of like, and I understand, you kind of want to just get back to some type of normalcy, because everybody's going crazy. I'm going crazy. Everyone that I know is really, really going through it right now. But I think just a little pain now for a lot of gain later, in my opinion. So you asked me a specific question. When do you think we should open back up? Shouldn't be by a date. Should be by the numbers. Once we start to see us head lower, and once we see that curve start to happen, that's when we start the countdown. Maybe 6 to 7, I would say 5 to 6 weeks after that point, we open back up. That's what I think. I don't think it should be a date, because the virus doesn't have a date. The virus doesn't know and has no respect for a date, in my opinion.
So we're talking about two scenarios, right? So one scenario is we open back up, and now we get our second wave, and let's say everybody's open like a month, and now all of a sudden we realize it was a mistake, and now we got to go back into lockdown. And now how much? So now we realize we made a mistake, so the second lockdown is going to go how long? And then we realize, okay, we made a mistake, so when is the right time? Or do we just crush it now? I mean, we already got 26 million people that are laid off, so why don't we just crush it now and trying to do the best we can now and take our pain now? And then
right, that's like me. When I got my first couple of tattoos. Well, one tattoo I got under my arm, man, it hurt so bad, I almost wanted to quit. But I'm like, if I quit now, it defeats the purpose, because I got to come back and get it anyway. So it's like that. That's how I feel, Phil. I don't know, man. I feel you, but God, man, it's just I just don't want to see people get. I don't want to see more deaths, man. And I know it's easy. It's harder for a person like myself and people like maybe Rob, who have encountered individuals or have contracted it themselves, like myself, and see my wife go through it. She got hit harder. See my whole family go through it. Stepfather to my mom, the mother-in-law, all of us. So it's easier for me to be that strong-headed. Like, no, this is not a game. Like, we need to keep this locked down. But I don't know, man. Go ahead, Phil.
Well, I just think some people are already at their wits' end. They got to put food on the table. The $1,200 stimulus check isn't going to be enough. Maybe they're in some different kind of tax bracket where they can't go on unemployment, or they still have a job. And everybody's in a different situation, right? So the idea that we would just do this indefinitely isn't really going to sit well with most Americans. And we had a comment here on the Twitter side earlier, this PLT Capital suggested maybe we're going to see civil unrest pretty soon. I mean, we're already seeing truckloads of guys armed to the teeth heading down to their capitals in
Phil,
a show of force.
I said, Phil, I was like, hey, if you saw a bunch of black brothers jumping out of that thing, man, I don't know how the crowd would take that.
I saw that tweet, man. That cracked me up.
Hey, man, I feel you. And there's no easy direction to go with this. It really isn't. Because I think we open back up. Go ahead.
I think the easiest direction would be for them to all just wear masks while they protest.
I think so too. That's a compromise to me, Phil. I would be willing to open back up. I would be willing to take your strategy if it was mandatory they wear masks. Because we know there's so much evidence to show that if everyone wore a mask, it would literally it would shut it. You know, it would bring this curve down. It really would.
Yeah.
It would reduce the R naught.
It would reduce the R naught correctly. We need to get it under 1.
Yeah, I just
under 1.
I just have a hard time. I just don't want to see force used to make somebody wear a mask. I mean, think about your mom just trying to go someplace and suddenly she's getting arrested. You know, how would you feel? And it's like, over a mask? Like, well, just give her a mask. But unfortunately, we know from history that most local law enforcement has a tendency to use force. I'm surprised something didn't happen. I put it up over here on my live stream going to Twitter. You know, these guys, they literally got like a decommissioned military vehicle.
I know, man.
Yeah.
Yo, that was crazy, man. Oh my God, those militia. But you know
that
what? Go ahead, Rob.
That was an hour. That's where I worked. Was where that happened in Harrisburg.
Yeah, PA, right?
Yeah, exactly. My buddy called me because I'm laid off. They still got a couple guys keeping the shop open. Well, I don't know why nobody's coming in there, but he was telling me about it. He's like, it's crazy, and he's I think he's Puerto Rican or something. I'm not quite sure, anyways. But he's like, if I showed up there with a bunch of my buddies, they would have shot our asses. You know, I was like, I don't know what to tell you, dude. I said, this whole thing is like, I do see like the rights part of it. I mean, I'm not.
I do too. I do too.
And I'm not trying to say. I don't know how you tread that line of forcing people and hope and understanding. You know, I don't know how you do that, because no matter what, one side or the other is going to get upset.
Yeah. Yep. But I think a happy medium. A happy median is lifting the ban, but you gotta wear a mask.
Yeah.
Well, can I interject an idea here real quick?
Ahead.
Because
Absolutely.
we have a history, we have an analog that we can look at and examine it to see how effective it has been to use force for something that essentially is a public health issue. And that would be the war on drugs. I'm personally opposed to the war on drugs. I think it's been an unmitigated disaster. It's ruined countless lives, and we've used force for something that really is more of a public health issue and should be addressed that way. I personally don't use drugs. I don't want to use drugs. I understand some people do and they get addicted, and I don't think incarcerating them is necessarily the best thing to do. And I think really if we just legalized drugs and regulated it and then made it a public health issue, that almost like, a mental disease, then we could more effectively address that. I think wearing masks kind of falls in that camp. That's a public health issue that doesn't need force to fix. I think eventually, there's a lot of progress that can be made in shaming somebody, right? I mean, we all get that look, like when you skip ahead in line and you didn't realize that you're skipping in line, and the 6 people who are in front of you, they shame you with nothing more than a glance. And I think that would happen over time. And that might be the better route to go. We don't necessarily need to make laws and, have people yanked out of subways and buses.
Hey, but
and
Phil,
like
I gotta ask. Okay, recently, I was on a podcast discussing this matter with somebody who doesn't believe in the death ratio. They don't believe that this is as deadly as it seems. They literally made that argument that the flu is much more deadly, which in my understanding,
that's not even an opinion.
I know it's not. It's not even an opinion.
Especially now.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
50,000 deaths.
I know, right? So it's just an absolute lie. So she is convinced that, she's a libertarian, just like you, that these measures are absolutely draconian. The fact that they would try to enforce a mask, how would those people sort of operate in society then? Would it be okay for them to just completely believe exactly what they believe, and there'd be no ramifications, no repercussions for somebody just saying, you know what, I don't want to wear a mask. I'm not going to wear a mask. This is all a hoax. This is 5G. This is a hoax. How do you feel about that?
Well, I believe in business owners and their rights to make rules for entering their business. And essentially, if you're a coffee shop that doesn't want people in there without wearing a mask, then you would have a sign on the front of your business that says, hey, look, no shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service. And we've gotten used to that. And frankly, that's the business owner's right.
Here in Michigan is like that. There are some areas I can't take my pistol in. They say no pistols.
Yeah.
And I can't. Yeah. I mean, you're right. That could be a route. But I just want to show you guys really quickly before we get to the next caller, Rob. This pretty much illustrates it for you. With the exception of New Zealand, which they did a great job out the gate. They were one of the early ones to jump on this thing and really clamp down and get a hold of this virus early. So they were able to flatten the curve. Doesn't mean it's cured, but they were able to flatten the curve early. But if you take a look at every other country that, I mean, in the purple, or not purple, but like salmon pink color, you see all the countries that really don't adhere to the culture of wearing a mask. That's, Iran, they kiss each other on the cheek. You got Germany, France, they kissing each other on the Spain, Italy, United States. We shun people with wearing a mask. Think someone's coming up to rob them, especially if you got black skin. You know how that goes. But Hong Kong, South Korea, Japan, Singapore, lying China. We know their numbers are way higher than this, but they do an effective job as well. All the commonality here, the common theme is that these countries are used to wearing masks. That's how I look at that chart there. But I don't know. Let's see who go ahead, Rob.
The ultimate thing is you have to ask, let's say nobody wore masks. This whole thing started, right? Nobody wears masks and nobody's in lockdown. What happens? You have complete, utter disaster. So just by doing this, the amount of lockdowns we've at least to this point, which proves that point of it, right? And then just implementing the mask, trying to get more people to wear the mask, we're going to see the effects of that. The problem is you can't see that effect right now. That effect you see a month from now.
That's the problem. Yep, that's the issue. That's the issue, Rob. I think as humans, especially with this virus, we want to see instant results. And so it's a lag time. It's a 5-6 week lag time with anything we do today with this virus. You won't see instant results. And I think that's a disconnect that most of us are struggling with as well. Let me get this other caller, Rob. I appreciate you calling in tonight again. Great conversation.
Thanks, guys.
All right. It's your boy Crypto Blood, and we've got Phil on tonight as co-host. Who's calling in?
Yeah, it's Default, man.
Default, what's going on, brother?
Just listening to this conversation, man, and I keep saying it's over, yo. I know people keep saying they ready to get back to normal. There's no going back. It's over.
Shout out to Default. I think Default, you put this article actually in the YouTube members chat room on Telegram. I believe that was you that put the Forbes article up there about Sweden.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. People. I'm just so frustrated, but at the same time, I'm just accepting it's over because the way people are viewing this, they keep viewing it as it's just the flu or it's the cold, and we're just, everybody, you just got to get it and then we're going to be immune to it. And you keep hearing reports that people are getting reinfected and they're getting reinfected and they're dying from it. So that tells me this is not just a normal, this is not no flu. This is not no regular, easy cold that you're going to get over and you can just move on with life. So everybody that's saying we got to open everything back up, I don't think they understand the severity. I don't think they're doing the research enough to understand what's going on. And I view this like this. This is how I view it. I view this as kind of you can get the AIDS virus by being around people.
Mm-hmm. Airborne package.
That's how I view
what I
it.
call it. It's an airborne package. Yep.
And so it's just like, if you view it like that, just to think, oh, we can just open things back up and not wear masks and not take proper precautions, you sound crazy to me. Like, and I don't know what else to say to people. Like, we're not going back to normal. There's no normal. I don't think there's going to be a vaccine anytime soon, if there's ever a vaccine or a cure. I don't know what the solution is. And you live in a society where people want instant gratification. It want instant results.
Yeah.
So I don't see, especially here in our culture, I don't see people, doing what's necessary to combat this issue. I just see people they're just gonna get mad, and people are gonna get violent. There's gonna be social unrest soon. We already have issues with the supply chain. All these issues is gonna keep compounding, and I keep saying this. There's a lack of leadership from every level, from the federal, state, local, every level, from just people's households, because they want to go back outside. They need a haircut, and they they want to go to a restaurant. Like, this is a long-term issue, and people still don't view it like that.
This is a marathon that we've entered. Like someone said, year zero. I made that point. I coined 2020 as year zero a few weeks ago, and I think that's where we are. Phil, would your opinion of a reopening change if you knew that this virus was something that you could easily get reinfected with, or the antibodies wore off pretty quickly? What would your stance be at that point? Would it stay the same, or what? I'm curious to know.
Well, first off, I sympathize with default's pessimism. I mean, we're all probably feeling the same way right now. Hopefully the show is cheering them up a little bit. But I think here's the thing, man. We're all still going to grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
We're all still going to gas stations.
Mm-hmm.
We're all still going to pharmacies. I chose to drive up, by the way, to Walgreens, and I put my little glove on and everything, and I didn't touch the debit card when they gave it back to me. I used my gloved hand. So don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm doing all the silly stuff that everybody else is doing, but why is it we draw the line there? I get why we've shut down the NHL and the NBA and March Madness. I'm just as frustrated as everyone else with regard to all those things, but why can't we have, I don't know, maybe some fast food places that open up and, they could spread their tables out, you know what I mean? Like 6 feet apart. And by the way, we want you to wear a mask. I mean, can't we gradually bring things semi back to normal with the idea that some young people are not going to kick the bucket as a result from this, and they need an income and they want to do things.
That's the thing, man. It's affecting young people. That's the thing. Like, I know a few people in their 30s who have passed from this. A buddy in Atlanta who I just talked to last week, he said he knew someone in their 30s that passed from it. It's not
There's infants that are dying.
There was an infant here in Metro Detroit that passed from it. What happened was, Phil, she got COVID. The COVID turned into a type of meningitis. So it opened up because, COVID, we're finding out. This is another thing. We're finding out that this virus, people, I'm not trying to be gloom and doom. I'm just trying to be real so that people understand what the hell is going on here. This virus attacks our T cells, the T cells in our blood. So it weakens your immune system. So this young infant had COVID. They tested her for it, and she ended up passing a few days later from meningitis. Because her immune system was so weak, it got into her brain. She died from it. Now, yes, that's a real kind of probably outlier, right? But I'm just putting that out there to show people it's only been 2 months that we know of. I know they're saying that it's been here since December, and I believe that. I believe this. California said they've been having cases out in there since December. But what I'm saying is, it's so early, and we're learning new stuff every day about this thing that, to me, because I try to stay on top of this thing, Phil, to me, it is very concerning. Because now, at first it was only old people. Now we're seeing, I don't know anybody over 65 that got it. And either had hospitalized or had it really bad. Go ahead, Default.
To his point, I would agree if we had testing. Like we're 2 months in, we still don't have widely available tests. So it's like, okay, we can implement some type of measures where you could open some things back up if you had testing, if you knew who had it and who didn't have it, or who had it already. Like, it's like I said, it's just been a lack of leadership in every facet. And unfortunately, I know you're more so on the Trump bandwagon. But it's not just Trump. This is a lack of a leadership with the government. I mean,
it's a lack of leadership from all. If you look at it though, Default is a lack of leadership from mostly like Western countries.
Yeah, like I said, it's the culture. It's the culture.
It's the culture.
There was, especially for the U.S., it's been bail out the corporations. Like, I know you touched on the financial and impacts and how people, staying home are making more than people that are working. But honestly, you wouldn't create that incentive because you don't want people to go out back into the workforce. You don't want people out. So you got to create an incentive to keep them in the house so they don't spread the virus or they don't get the virus. So,
and the thing is, bro, like, it creates anxiety. It does for me. It has for my wife. It creates an anxiety now when you go out, because you don't know if you're gonna get reinfected. Listen, when you catch the COVID, people, it's something you do. I'm serious. Like, I was talking to my wife and my mom last night about it, because I'm starting to think about when I was going through it, some of the other things that I was going through. You have bouts of delusion, like you hallucinate and stuff. I was literally hallucinating and thinking that the Grim Reaper was coming to my door every night. My wife had bouts of hallucination. And I'm hearing now people are starting to talk about this more. That's one of the things. You start hallucinating. And it's so much you go through on top of being isolated. So you start to have these anxiety fits. Not my wife more than me, because she got hit harder than me, but she's like scared every time we go out. And now you don't have to worry for me in my household. I can't only worry about myself and my wife. I got to worry about my daughter getting it and bringing it back home like the first time it happened. So I think just mentally, bro, it's just going to be a different, even if we do open up. I know people want to open up. I think they want to open up because they want to get closer to back to some type of normalcy. But I really don't think, I don't know, man. I don't know what the new world is going to look like after we kind of start to deal with this. Unless we have some miracle situation where a vaccine, that's the caveat. If we have a vaccine that comes out, again, I'm not taking it. So, but if, there's one that comes out, it cures it, or if there's some type of pharmaceutical that really knocks all the symptoms down to where it's like having a flu or a common cold, then hey, yeah, that's a different situation. But until then, I don't know, people. I just saw here in the chat room, my man Hooli Savage said that his cousin Matt caught it and it almost killed him. And then Cryptonomics, I heard about this, man. Very sorry for your loss. His mom passed from it. And I'm sure, I don't know how old she was, but everyone I know, they're all under 65. They're all under 65. So it's just, I don't know, man. We'll have to see what happens. Anything else, Default?
I just wanted to touch on the post office thing real quick.
Yeah. Something more
the reason why
depressing.
Yeah, the reason why it's insolvent is there was a law in 2006 that made it mandatory that the post office had to pay in the future their pension and their health retirees. It's like 75 years in the future. There's no corporation or company that has that obligation, and that's the reason why they're losing. They're losing money every quarter. And so, if you would just change that law to every other company, the post office would be fine. So, I mean, that's again, it's an undermining by the government because they want FedEx and UPS. UPS and probably Amazon now to take over the postal service. But that's all I had to add, really.
Cool.
You can look it up too. You can Google it.
All right, cool.
I'm very aware of this, like what's going on with the fuckery with the whole postal service, and the employees like.
I want to keep you on the line, Default, because we got one last subject, Phil. We're gonna try to squeeze in here tonight. It's been a great conversation with Phil Kennedy Financial. Guys, you could definitely go check him out on YouTube, on Twitter as well. But the last one I want to really quickly touch on, Phil, was this whole Bitcoin or Hyperbitcoinization. That's a long word. But, you know, this article from AMB Crypto is talking about stablecoin and its accelerating growth. Is this going to cause people to head to Bitcoin more? I don't know how. They kind of reached with that one, but let me know your thoughts on stable coins, Phil, and how do you feel about them going forward? I had a thesis that started maybe back in 2018. I saw the trend and I said, you know what? These stable coins are actually going to be quite popular, and I think they're going to constitute a large majority of the usage on all these crypto networks, these blockchains, and sure enough, that's where we are with things. But do you think stable coins are going to grow? Do you think that's a tail risk for our industry? Or what do you think? Do you see hyper Bitcoinization coming where we're all and, you know, if you guys don't know, hyper Bitcoinization is basically an event where not by force, but by choice, everyone flees to Bitcoin as kind of like the super end all one world currency, question mark, I guess. I don't know if that's the case, but it's an asset that everyone rushes into. Phil, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen as a result of stable coins. I mean, frankly, CB, I was always leery of Tether. And I knew that we were in a bubble in late 2017, early 2018. But despite that, I didn't move to Tether for safety. I moved to Bitcoin for safety, and I took it in the pants just like everybody else. I witnessed the 85% loss, but I experienced the unreal gains, especially in the alts, and just transferred those over to the relative safety of Bitcoin. I've always been concerned about these stable coins, especially Tether. I mean, it sounds like Tether's operating a fractional reserve. They don't have $1 for every Tether that's been created. And let's be honest, CB, if the U.S. government or any government wanted to shut down Tether, they could. I don't think it would be that difficult to turn it off. And I don't want to be holding a bunch of Tethers that suddenly are worthless and can't be transferred. I know a lot of people feel comfortable with that, but me personally, I don't. So I don't really see how stablecoins are going to lead to hyper Bitcoinization.
Yeah, I don't either. But you know, one thing that I'd never thought about until when I looked at this article, I went and searched the podcast that the gentleman from Circle, Jeremy Allier, I think, he was on some podcast, and he talked about this whole stablecoin benefit of it because they're a big pusher of the stablecoin. And I never thought about this, man. Stablecoins are definitely better than US dollars, and the reason is because it's almost like a bearer asset, right? You can't, once I give you the stable coin, I can't take it back, right? It's almost that type of characteristic, right, versus cash, or not maybe cash, but let's say I wire you some money, or I pay with something with a debit card. There's risk of chargebacks and, you know, freezing accounts and stuff. If I send you some USDC from my own personal account to yours, there's not, you know, it's done. It only takes 3 minutes until it's kind of final, right? And I was like, dang, that's a good. So it's like cash, but digital version. It may have some legs, man. And you know, I think what you're talking about as far as the risks, definitely all these stable coins essentially go through a central hub or issuer, right? So like with Bitfinex or whoever does the USD tether, if a government ever comes after them, there's your central point of failure. So that's where I don't even think stable coins compete with Bitcoin. They're like apples and oranges to me. But I'm just talking about, do you think Bitcoin will ever be that run to safety, regardless of how you feel about stable coins?
Well, it's certainly going to need a multi-trillion-dollar market cap before it's ever stable. I mean, we're still a dinghy in an enormous ocean during a Cat 5 storm. So we're prepared to get kicked around. And that is going to continue to be the case, regardless of the fact that we're now, a little over 2 weeks away from the halving. I'm still a proponent of stable coins. I personally don't want to hold them for a long time. I will say this, though, CB, since 2017, 2018, we have a larger variety of stable coins. I mean, you mentioned Circle.
Which is good.
Yep. There's Tether. Yep. There's DAI, right? Yep. So potentially what you could do during the next bubble is move to 5. And if one of them goes bust, that's only 20% of your portfolio. And then you don't have to ride it down. I would be surprised if we fall, if we do get to a multi-trillion-dollar market cap in Bitcoin, I would be surprised if we fall 85% again. 50% would probably be within the realm of possibility because people are going to take profits. But I don't know, man. Like long-term, I'm afraid of them. I really see them as that central point of failure. They don't have the trustless, immutable, decentralized nature that Bitcoin has. But they are part of the crypto ecosystem, and I'm a proponent from that standpoint. I think they do serve.
They are part of it, and they're an important part from a price discovery mechanism as well, because now you don't have those. Basically, what stable coins do is literally, it's funny because people think of stable coins as like maybe like the stable currency that it's pegged to. I know we all say, the dollar is not stable and it's losing value, but in the short run, it is a stable currency. Most of these fiat currencies are the G20 ones, but it actually stabilizes the Bitcoin and all the altcoins because people are able to jump in and out of that stable coin, and it doesn't create these wild swings between Bitcoin and the altcoin. So there is some benefit from that perspective, but I don't know, man. I don't want it to be, but I think it's going to become more and more prevalent. I think it's going to become more and more used by this ecosystem. What do you think, Default?
I agree with most of your points, but I don't see, it's not going to be a voluntary, like everybody runs to Bitcoin. And honestly, this kind of happened before because I mostly trade Bitcoin. So this happened, I think it was October 2018. Tether lost like 10% or like 10 to 50% of its value. And the price of Bitcoin shot up like $1,000, like within like 10 minutes. And I think like an event like that would happen if, because there's already rumors that they're going to come after these stable coins. But I don't see, like I said, I don't see it voluntary. I see it like some type of event like that, like something with the U.S. creating their own stable coin, which is looking more and more like it's going to happen. And then, those stable coins losing so much value, everybody fleeing to Bitcoin and the price accelerating in a short term. But I mean, my view on stable coins, I don't use them that much. Like I trade, but I usually just, if I'm getting out of Bitcoin, I just go to the dollar itself. Like I'll do a peer-to-peer. So I don't really mess with them, especially not Tether.
But answer this question for me though. In a scenario where, let's say we have some type of banking crisis and we start having bail-ins and they start taking a percentage of your money over, let's say you have 100,000 or so. What's that going to do to the stable coin market? Because at that point, the banks can't do that.
As long as the government doesn't come after these coins, they should, and in that situation, they will accelerate in value. And if you're savvy enough to understand how to get out of your bank account, because that's another thing, is like the learning curve with a lot of people. They still are not aware of this market. So, you know, the people that are aware of this market could take advantage of it. And I think that would be a big, like, you know, loophole to get out of that whole situation. But like I said, unless the only way I see like anything in crypto, like falling to zero or worthless, is really the government coming in and trying to like, and being successful at regulating the market. I think the threat alone, short term, would hurt it, but long term, it was still prosper. But as far as the stable coins, as long as the government keeps allowing it, I don't see it faltering. Like Tether can go on for the next 2,000 years. Like I know it's not. We all know it's not back 1-to-1. It's back supposedly 70-to-1.
Which is not honestly too bad if you look at traditional markets. I mean, we got a fractional reserve system. I don't even know if it's 3% of the available. No. You know, so I don't know.
And I just want to add, like, a lot of the people that are against Tether, like on Twitter and stuff like that, the conspiracy against Tether, they, you know, their synopsis, their view was that Tether there was no backing at all. Like it was 0-to-1. I mean, like there was nothing backing it. It was just
that was proved wrong.
That was proved wrong. So
yeah. Well, we'll see, but that's a good theory. I think if we go bail-ins, people, you actually have a carry. I think you'll have stable coins be above par. Above the dollar. It'd be like, I don't know, $1.10 or something, because there's going to be a premium. People are going to want it. I don't know how that's going to work. It's going to be interesting, because if you're getting taxed on your money in the bank in that fiat, what happens when you're out of the bank and you have your fiat on the blockchain? That brings up a new scenario that maybe we'll see sometime in the future. But Default, appreciate your call in as always, and I'll see you in the chat rooms, bro.
All right, man.
All right. Well, there we have it, ladies and gents. Phil, any last words, man? I appreciate you coming on and always enjoy you. And I'm sure my audience does as well.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing that Noir said last night on my program from Crypto and Cigars. Let's just be good to each other, man. A lot of people are struggling right now. Give people some room. Be a little more understanding and sympathetic than normal. But this is going to take its toll on people one way or another, whether it be from losing a loved one or dealing with the disease themselves, or just the psychological toll from being cooped in all the day. You know, try to find something to do that's positive. John Kim was making fun of me because I got the home gym, the basement gym, in full effect over here at the Kennedy residence. So, you know, try to find ways to make yourself healthier, get a jumping rope or something, or what do you call those? Like a kettlebell. There's lots of different ways to just stimulate your mind. But I think that's really where I want to end. Folks can check me out on my show. Find it on YouTube, Philip Kennedy Financial. I'm over at Kennedy Finance on Twitter. And we got some good episodes coming up next week, so be on the lookout for those.
Cool. Well, again, thanks for joining me tonight. Ladies and gents, definitely hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. Check me out. Trying to get back to the daily videos as far as reporting on what we got going on in crypto. But yeah, check us out. I'm out of here, people. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe again. Peace.
Stacking my coin, stacking my coin, stacking my coin. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, cash. Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, cash. Stacking my coin, stacking my coin, stacking my coin, stacking my coin.
Fuck it, do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, cash. Fuck fiat paper.
Fucking thing sucks. We'll do it live. Okay.